Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
You know, it's interesting. You got everybody out there at NBC and elsewhere to drive-by media. I didn't know. Nobody knew about Matt Lauer. We're stunned, we're shocked, and yet it hasn't taken them long to find all these old clips of Lauer sexually harassing, sexually suggesting, taunting, what have you. I mean, they're all over the place now. How could they not have known? Anyway, folks, great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh, and the broadcast week continues. Here we are on Thursday. It's great to have you. Telephone number 800-282-2882. The email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Nancy Pelosi has called for John Conyers to resign. Now, I want to put on my liberal progressive media hat and tell you what this headline would be if it were a Republican woman suggesting that some guy resign. White woman of privilege tells hospitalized black icon to resign. If the news media treated Pelosi the way we get treated, white woman of privilege tells hospitalized black icon, perhaps in bad shape, to quit and get out. And here's another thing to consider. You cannot ask the black guy to step down and not the white guy. That's Franken. It's exactly right, Mr. Sturdley. She's not calling on Franken to resign. She'd probably say, well, he's in the Senate. I don't have anything to say about what happens in the Senate. I'm in the House. But it doesn't matter. If a white woman of privilege, and believe me, Nancy Pelosi has a lot of privilege out there, is going to tell some poor hospitalized black guy. Did you hear what James Clyburn said? James Clyburn, I don't believe this. All the accusers are white. Who elected them? So Pelosi says Conyers got to go and Al Franken stays, even though there is a fifth accuser that has surfaced on Franken. Here is Nancy Pelosi from her press briefing just this morning. Reporters said a fourth woman has come out accusing Congressman Conyers, and more in your caucus are calling on him to resign. How come you haven't called on him to resign?
The allegations against Congressman Conyers, as we have learned more since Sunday, are serious, disappointing, and very credible. It's very sad. The brave women who came forward are owed justice. I pray for Congressman Conyers and his family and wish them well. However, Congressman Conyers should resign.
There you have it. White woman of privilege telling hospitalized black guy to scram. Now, Snerdley came in to me today. It was, I guess, about 40 minutes ago. He said, how did you know? How did you know? I said, what are you talking about? You told us on Tuesday the Senate was going to pass the tax reform bill out of the Senate. You said they were going to vote for it. And I said, that's right, I did. How did you know? I said, it was just instinct. I didn't know anything. I hadn't talked to anybody. I just knew that it was going to happen. Well, I thought that it was going to happen. So looking at why, did you hear what the New York Times did yesterday? I mean, everybody's trying to figure, okay, why McCain and Flake have got nothing to lose here. I mean, if McCain and Flake want to continue to hammer Trump, it'd be easy to vote no on this thing and head off into the sunset of Arizona and be at peace with themselves. I mean, if they really hate Trump and they want to sabotage Trump, it'd be easy to say, no, can't vote for it. But they're both going to vote for it. Flake not running again, McCain not running again. So what explains this? Well, the optimal answer to that is that these guys have finally seen the light after a year and gotten on board the Trump agenda. But that's a bit much to believe. But look at what, and I don't know if this is a factor, but it may well be, because all of these people in the establishment turn to and look at the New York Times. And do you know what they did? The New York Times basically turned to Twitter and became a bunch of political activists. The New York Times editorial board tweeted all over the place yesterday with the names and phone numbers of Republican senators that voters should call and tell them to vote no on the Republican tax bill. All day yesterday, the New York Times opinion page was sending out tweets that seemed to be from a campaign headquarters. They're not just telling people what's wrong with the tax bill, they're urging people to call their... Remember when I used to do that? No, I never did it. When I was accused of doing it, I'm going back now 25, 28 years. I have long been accused of artificially impacting and affecting the outcome of legislation because the media routinely accused me of telling you to call members of Congress. And I said, I don't do it. I am not an activist. I don't use this program for activism. My audience is smart enough to figure out to do this anyway if they want to. I do not tell people what to do. I don't even tell people what to think. I just don't give them much of a choice between right and wrong. And so here now, the New York Times comes along and activistly urges people to get hold of these Republican senators and give them what for. Now, you may be saying, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal, we've known for a long time that the New York Times is the Democrat Party house organ. And we've known that the New York Times basically serves as a PAC for the Democrat Party. But this kind of seals the deal. And it illustrates there is the futile desperation out there. And it is climbing. It is mounting. It is effervescing, and it's overflowing. The frustration on the left, none of them can believe this is happening. They can't believe Trump is still there. And let's go to the audio sound bites. As Trump succeeds, as the nation improves, you got the stock market now past 24,000. 52 Republican senators say they are going to vote for the tax bill. The president is succeeding on a number of levels, and with each new success, the Democrats mount a campaign that he needs to be gotten rid of under the terms of the 25th Amendment, that he is senile, that he is incompetent, that he's mentally infirm, that he is out to lunch, that he is simply suffering dementia. MSNBC, CNN, a number of other drive-by news outlets are once again raising this allegation. We have a couple of examples. David Axelrod last night on CNN with Anderson Cooper. Question, Mr. Axelrod, reports on Trump's seemingly reborn birther views and the Access Hollywood tape. You know what this is really about? Trump had the audacity to retweet some video of militant Islamic atrocities. And these original videos were posted by a far right-wing, so-called far right-wing group in Britain. And as you know, inside the Beltway, it is simply not permitted and it is unacceptable to relate or try to relate militant Islam to terrorism. It is a religion of peace. There is no terrorism in Islam, and this is the way it's always been. It's the way it's always going to be, and Trump comes along and blows it to smithereens and retweets video of militant Islamic atrocities. And, of course, the establishment in the UK, the establishment here are beside themselves. This just isn't done. And in their world, this means Trump is losing his marbles. Now, this question here, Trump's denying what they say he said on the Access Hollywood video. That's stupid. We all saw it. We've seen it. Trump's now saying it wasn't him. Trump's now saying it was doctored and made up. Trump is toying with these people, but they think he's losing his mind. And now his reborn birther views, those are related to militant Islamic videos and other things. If you listen to Janet Yellen, who's outgoing chairman of the Federal Reserve, all of a sudden says she's having nightmares about the national debt at $20 trillion. As she's leaving, she never had a dream, much less a nightmare about it, when Obama was building it up. When Obama took office, the national debt was $12 trillion. When Obama leaves, it's 20. He nearly doubled it. And so Trump's right there with a tweet to Janet Yellen. hey, it's kind of interesting here that you didn't even notice it when Obama was doing it. And you're just not supposed to call these people out that way. And so when you do, when you call them out, when you retweet videos of militant Islamic terror that prove that there is militant Islamic terror, these people, they're the ones that are coming unhinged, folks. The drive-by media, the left, the Democrat Party, they're the ones coming unhinged, accusing Trump of it. So Anderson Cooper says, David Axelrod, these reports on Trump, how concerned are you? The president seems to be operating in a different reality when it comes to any number of topics.
I am concerned, Anderson, because I sat next to the Oval Office for a couple of years. If the person who sits there is delusional, that poses all kinds of very, very frightening scenarios. And when you read particularly the things that he's saying in private, the denial of his own comments that were on tape, the rehashing of the discredited birther theory, going back to the votes in the election and the notion that he actually won the popular vote, these are delusional comments. It is very, very unsettling to think that the President of the United States would harbor them.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, Mr. Axelrod, but this doesn't carry any weight. You guys have no ground to stand on. History revisionism. Trump is toying with you guys. Meanwhile, your accused, guilty perpetrators of sexual harassment are coming out with some of the most convoluted, twisted apologies. You talk about being in a state of denial. Look at the full Franken. The full Franken is an apology technique that Matt Lauer is attempting to use partially, and it's bombing out. I don't remember it. I'm really devastated these women feel this way. I take a lot of pictures. You never admit it. You apologize for it, but you imply the women are lying. And this is going to come back and bite Franken. It's going to get him in the end. They're doing everything they can to hold on to him, but in the process here, it's Trump who's losing his mind. It's Trump is delusional. Here's David Rodham-Gergen, same program. Anderson Cooper. David Rodham-Gergen. They're saying this is no different than all of his words and how he shapes his own myths and creates his own reality. So what are we dealing with here?
The president occasionally has to make really, really tough decisions that are a matter of life and death. And you want a man of absolutely clear mind and able to absorb things. It's reached the point, Anderson, what I've been wondering, whether his family and some of the top people in the White House ought to be conferring among themselves about what might be called in other ways some sort of intervention, and to really try to help him.
An intervention. Oh, we love Trump so much we want to help him. We care so much about Trump we want to help him. We love our country. We wanted to give him a chance. We've stood aside and we've let Trump be Trump, but now we've reached the point that we can't stay silent anymore. Trump must go. Trump's deranged. Trump's delusional. The nation is at risk. We might get killed. We're all going to die. The family has got to move in and intervene and stop the guy. Meanwhile, it was CNN that refused the White House Christmas party invite on Friday night at the White House. Folks, it's fascinating to watch all of this. Who would have ever believed we would be here? It's November 30th. We are 11 months into the however many phony Russian collusion investigations there have been and are. We are 11 months into all of those investigations. Trump colluded with the Russians. They don't have a shred of evidence yet. Mueller obviously doesn't either, based on the leaks that are coming out of his investigation. Donald Trump is still president. Donald Trump is prospering. The Donald Trump agenda is on the move. There is a momentum and an inertia, and none of the people in the media, the Democrat Party, had the wildest, their worst nightmares. This was not possible. This is the last place they thought they would be. Not only is Trump rolling and his agenda moving forward, they are imploding. The party that conducts accusations on the war on women is finding that all of its top name brand people are lechers. You can't tell me these people have any idea that they were going to be here. Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose, Glenn Thrush, Garrison Keillor, Mark Halperin, Harvey Weinstein, 3 CNN editors, 3 NPR executives, 2 people at the New Republic are out of work, and Donald Trump isn't. Donald Trump is still there, and the tax bill cleared the Senate, or will when they have the vote. Al Franken is floundering and looks to be the fool he has always been. John Conyers is in the hospital because of stress. A woman of privilege, a white woman of privilege, has told this poor black guy in the hospital to quit, to resign, to get out of there, that he is the problem. James Clyburn of the Congressional Black Caucasians is pointing out that all of Conyers' accusers are white women. Hollywood is damn near a smoking ember, the entirety of the drive-by media teetering on the brink of ruin, and it is Trump who is delusional. It is Trump who is losing his mind. No, these people are losing theirs. Cannot impress upon you how none of them ever dreamt wildly that anything like this could ever happen, ever, no matter who was elected president. No one could have predicted this wild year. But I predicted the Senate would end up voting for the Trump tax bill. And I also, you remember my saying many months ago how once these young millennial women who were not around during the Clinton 90s, when they get a load of what the Clintons did and what Hillary did, when they fully understand what was happening in the Democrat Party with the mistreatment of women, the Hillary bimbo eruptions, you remember me predicting to you that they would not put up with it and they would not cover for it and they would not circle the wagons. And I dare to point out to you that many of the reporters on all of these sexual harassment stories are millennial women. And they're gunning for Matt Lauer and they're gunning for Al Franken. They are not tolerant. They are not typical leftists circling the wagon because there's something more important to them, and that's been women's studies and feminist studies. And they are a generation simply not going to put up with what their parents and grandparents have handed down to them. And I'll tell you what, John Conyers' lawyer just made a statement. He looks like he's from Nation of Islam, by the way. That's not a cut. I'm just advising you on his appearance if you haven't yet seen him. John Conyers' attorney said that Conyers will sure as hell not be pressured by a white woman of privilege to leave the House of Representatives. Well, he didn't say that. He said Pelosi. But we all know what they're thinking. John Conyers' attorney said Conyers will sure as hell not be pressured by Nancy Pelosi into resigning. Here's Pelosi, 23 soundbite. She had one other thing to say. And
there's a new day, and the courage of the women coming forward is something that is making a big difference, but also the attitude in the country, which I think some of it springs from the election of Donald Trump as president.
No. This has nothing to do with Trump. This has to do with you people on the left deciding that morality became an individual choice about 40 years ago. You people own this, Miss Pelosi. And welcome back. You're tuned to the most listened to radio talk show in America, Rush Limbaugh and the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. You know, folks, we like to be of service here. We like to help people who are in duress, people who are suffering. I said yesterday that I fully believe within a year Matt Lauer will be back on TV. This is what the establishment does. Brian Williams is back. Dan Rather is roaming around out there somewhere on the drive-by media plane, and he's filing reports on obscure networks. But he's still out there, and he's still guesting on various cable shows as a reporter and news person of stature. The drive-bys have much to protect. They have to protect these individuals because that then protects their institution. And the institution here is the media itself, the drive-by media. So when any of them take big hits like this, they eventually will circle the wagons and Matt Lauer will resurface. I want to help speed that up. I was reading the Vanity Fair piece, which is quite descriptive on some of the things that Matt Lauer was doing to these women. Did you know that he had a button underneath his desk that he could press and lock the door to his office? Now, why would one have that? I mean, he didn't have to get up. He didn't have to leave the desk in order to go up and lock the door. He had a button there. It could have been twofold. It could have been to keep women from leaving, but more than likely it was to keep people from walking in and interrupting what was happening in there. Now, the reason he didn't want to get up to have to go close and lock the door is because of what he would have had to interrupt taking place to do that. So if there is some kind of sexual activity going on while Matt Lauer is sitting in his chair, just reach under the desk and lock the door and you're done. So my idea, I know Matt Lauer wants to be back on TV, and I know that NBC wants him back on TV at some point. The drive-bys really do need that to happen. I'm just trying to offer a helpful suggestion. A reality TV show hosted by Matt Lauer called Locked and Loaded. It would be half dating game and half Survivor and would be filmed entirely in his office. Locked and Loaded with Matt Lauer. It'd be reality TV, got that door lock button underneath the desk. Think of the possibilities here, folks. By the way, the attorney for John Conyers, we now have the audio. This was moments ago. He held a press conference defiantly suggesting that Conyers isn't going to quit.
First of all, it is not up to Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi did not elect the congressman, and she sure as hell won't be the one to tell the congressman to leave.
So the attorney for the ill African-American member of Congress told a white woman of privilege to cram it. She didn't elect him, and she's not going to have any say-so in whether or not he leaves Congress. And there are people saying that it really ought to be up to the voters. The voters put these people there. It ought to be up to the voters to determine what happens to them. But that's only something suggested when the people in trouble are Democrats. When it's Republicans that are caught in the crosshairs, we don't want to wait for the voters to decide. We're already going to blame the voters for sending this person there in the first place. And then the left comes forward with its deep devotion to ethics, morality, and says, for the good of the country and for the good of whatever else, the named Republican has to go. Now, I want to address something here seriously. Nancy Pelosi predictably blamed all of this on Trump. Grab soundbite 23. I want you to hear it again, just 15 seconds. After suggesting that Conyers should resign, she realized she stepped in it. I mean, she realized that's a very, very controversial thing to do. So she had to try to soften it at the end of the presser.
There's a new day, and the courage of the women coming forward is something that is making a big difference. But also the attitude in the country, which I think some of it springs from the election of Donald Trump as president.
So some of it springs from the election of Donald Trump. So the reason why our party is in so much trouble is the election of Donald Trump. Now, to a certain extent, that's true. Donald Trump has driven them crazy. But they were losing elections in great numbers before Trump came along. We've documented this, talked about it a lot. The Democrats have been in trouble for a long, long time. The thing that masked it was that Obama was in the White House and moving his agenda forward. But out there, all across the fruited plain, the Democrat Party has been imploding. And in their worldview, the election of Trump does spell big trouble. But that's not what she means. She is trying to say here that all of these Democrat guys, the news, the talent, the news readers, the executives, the producers, the Hollywood, all of these people caught up in these sexual harassment charges and allegations is really because Trump was elected. And she's attempting to say Trump is this ignoramus and he's this barbarian and he's unsophisticated. And, of course, that is influencing our culture and behavior. And I want to seriously tackle this because that's not at all what's going on in America today. Back in 1987, when I was in Sacramento, I wrote a weekly newspaper column for a local paper and had writer's block one day. And I literally could not think of anything to write about. So as a means of trying to overcome it, I started writing down one-sentence thoughts, hoping that one of them or two would inspire me into a column idea. And after I got to about 15 of them, I said, you know what, this is the column, because I was writing sentences that were pithy, little philosophical things that I agreed with, that I thought were correct. Such as undeniable truth, and they became the 35 undeniable truths of life. I kept going and writing enough of them to get to 750 words, which is your average column length, and then it became known as the 25 undeniable truths of life. For example, number 24 was feminism was established so as to allow unattractive women easier access to the mainstream of society. And it was true then, it's true now. It's one of the main drivers of militant feminism. Not the only, but it's a significant player. There was another one that I wrote. Morality is not defined by individual choice. That's all it was. Simple little statement. Because even in 1987, I mean, we were coming out of the AIDS scare. We weren't coming out of it. We're smack dab in the middle of it. And it was all Reagan's fault, if you remember, because Reagan wasn't talking about it. The militant political gay movement was all over this as Reagan's fault. And the order of the day, according to the American left back then, was that we conservatives did not have the right to impose our morality on anybody else. That we're a bunch of Puritans, and we're a bunch of stuffed shirts, and we're a bunch of boring dry balls, and we don't have the right to tell other people how to live. And it was all part of the aspect of liberalism that came to life based on the non-judgmentalism. Liberals do not want to be judged, and there's a very good reason why. The judgment of liberals would not be positive or uplifting. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be held to convention. They don't want to be held to any standards, moral or otherwise. But I was making the point that morality is what it is. Morality is not defined by individual choice. You don't get to choose what's moral and not. What is moral and immoral is established and known. And it's kind of like pornography. You may have trouble defining it, but you know it when you see it. Same thing with morality and immorality. You may have trouble defining it for people, but you know immorality and ill-mannered behavior when you see it. And we raise our children to be moral and well-mannered. If we don't, there's no telling what individuals are going to turn out to be. Human beings need to be taught, need to be raised, need to be instructed. There's the reason you have a kid at the dinner table that interrupts people constantly or throws food. You stop them and you tell them that's wrong. If they refuse to get the message, you punish them. If they engage in behavior that is harmful to others or themselves, you stop them and tell them and you raise them. You try to raise them with good manners and self-respect, respect for others. And at some point, all of this evolves into you teaching them morality, right and wrong. Well, for the last 50 years, if not longer, there's been an attack on that whole premise of right and wrong and who gets to define it. And the left has lived and died with the premise that nobody but they or them get to define it, and it's an individual choice. Until you walk in the shoes of a liberal, you have no right to judge. You have no right to say what's right and wrong. And so The offshoot of this is that whatever liberals wanted to do was moral because they wanted to do it. And anybody that came along and judged them and disapproved was attacked. They were under attack. Many people who did this seriously were tried to be destroyed. And it begot the culture war. The culture war is largely over morality, the concepts of right and wrong, and whether or not they're universal or the result of individual choice. And the left has always believed that morality is an individual choice, that you don't get to define it for anybody else, and neither does society. And that attitude is what I believe has led us to today. There are consequences for all actions and inactions, and bad behavior, immoral behavior, incorrect behavior is always going to carry a price at some point. There will always be consequences for it. How do you explain all of these wealthy men? Matt Lauer, reputedly making $25 million a year. Harvey Weinstein, multi-million. All of these people involved have incredible wealth. They also had positions of power where there was nobody could tell them what they could do and couldn't do. And when they did behave badly, there was no punishment. Everybody got out of the way. Everybody was afraid of them. What lessons were they taught? I suggest to you none. They clearly didn't have any conscience. Or if they did, they were able to override it and subordinate it to their personal desires. But this is why we're where we are. And, of course, the people who advocate for morality and attempt to instill and live by concepts of right and wrong are mocked and laughed at and made fun of, and they're considered to be very dull and boring, and they're usually religious, and that means we can really attack them. And they just do that because they're so boring. Nobody want to have sex with them anyway, and nobody want to hang around with them anyway. Nobody want to have fun with them anyway. And so they're so dull and boring that they give themselves self-respect by telling themselves they're good people. And the liberals just roll right over them with this idea that they are the oddballs, that they're the kooks, that they pose the threat because they are attempting to impose their morality on everybody. Much like the left accuses the United States of trying to impose freedom on the rest of the world. Freedom is not an imposition. Morality could be, depending on your proclivities. But I really think this is the root of it here, folks. And it's taken a little while here, but the people who are being discovered to have engaged in this behavior, which is clearly reprehensible and perverted and whatever descriptive you want to come up with, no doubt are of the belief that morality doesn't apply to them and that it's nobody's business anyway. And I'm going to add a couple things to this, but I've got a break here because of the programming format. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. It's Rush Limbaugh. The liberals have turned on McCain on Twitter after he agrees to vote for the tax bill. They are all over McCain. They're having a fit as of around 11 o'clock this morning when he announced that he was going to vote yes on tax cuts. They are just fit to be tied. Now, I know I'm citing Twitter when I've often said that I wish the drive-bys would stop. But in this case, it fits my purpose. Here's McCain. I don't think he cares in this instance, but it's just another great illustration. They don't really love McCain. They don't love Republicans. It's not about that at all. So McCain's now getting beat up to shreds, and I don't know what impact it's going to have on him. We'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, I want to start on the phones with Catherine in Baltimore. Great to have you on the EIB network. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rush. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Great to hear from you.
Yes, just a couple points. The first point is, isn't it interesting with all the harassment and assault charges coming, various politicians, media people, that the private sector gets rid of almost immediately those that are accused, Matt Lauer, Weinstein, et cetera, et cetera. But in government, with John Conyers, Barney Frank, we have to have process. We have spokespeople.
Right.
We have to look at the legacy of the person. The wheels of justice seem to take forever. And again, it's a little dose of the government versus the private sector.
This is a brilliant observation. And in fact, can you, I would like to offer you an iPhone 10 if you would like one. But I want you to hang on, because I'm not gonna waste time asking you your carrying this. Just don't hang up, and Snurdy will get the details. If you want one,
I do, but okay. I have a second point that
you better be fast. What is it?
Okay, the fact that you have to. I implore people, as you spoke of morality, to judge people by the content of their character as an individual, not this group politics. All single mothers are wonderful. All people in the Black National Caucus are wonderful. All immigrants
That's
are
a congressional
wonderful.
Black Caucasians. Right?
Yeah.
No, I'm going to take issue with one thing. Your observation is brilliant, but the private sector ain't that fast. We'll be back in just a second. Don't go away. Cal Thomas has a piece today. The value of high moral standards has never been more apparent. Who decided traditional virtues were no longer viable? Somebody do a study, find out people were being damaged by being taught too much virtue. When did this happen, he asks. Hang on, folks, we're coming back. Greetings, my good friends. Welcome back. You are tuned to the one and only EIB network, and I am Rush Limbaugh, America's real anchorman, America's truth detector, and the doctor of democracy. And here we are, ready to go, revved and ready to emit vocal vibrations, rhetoric and resonance from coast to coast. 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Our previous caller was Catherine from Baltimore, and her point was a good one. She's contrasting the difference between the private sector and the public sector when it comes to victims and perpetrators of sexual harassment, how they're dealt with. She observed that private sector, once they find out about it, they get rid of the perp right then and there. Government, no. They take their time. They circle the wagons. They do everything they can to save the perp. They come out and say it's none of our business. They come out and say it's only sex. Didn't get in the way of whoever we're talking about, job performance and so forth. And while overall that's true, if you strict comparison, but I'm going to tell you, folks, the private sector's not that fast. They're not instantaneous. Now, everybody thinks that NBC decided to get rid of Matt Lauer in about 5 minutes. But I contend to you that they didn't. I contend to you that they hoped not to have to get rid of Matt Lauer. And I do it on the basis of this. You remember the original Ronan Farrow story on Harvey Weinstein that ran in the New Yorker? Some of you may remember that Ronan Farrow works at NBC. He's a consultant, a stringer. He's doesn't have a regular gig, but he does contract pieces. They assign him to go do stories, probably to get him out of the building. And then he goes and does the stories. He comes back, and he came back, and he had the Weinstein story. He had it nailed. He had thousands and thousands of words, and he had interviews. And NBC shelved it. NBC said, not interested. NBC said, we don't think you've nailed this down. NBC said, we're not comfortable with this. NBC said, shop it somewhere else. We just don't think this is ready for publication or for air. So Ronan Farrow walked it down the street to the New Yorker, where they immediately ran it. and the rest is history. Now, why would NBC have passed on this? Now, our old buddy Seton Motley believes that this is evidence that these news organizations do not do investigative news, particularly when it's of and about themselves. They do everything they can to delay it or to hide it or maybe even cover it up. How long did CBS know about Charlie Rose? And PBS, before the time came where they had no choice but then to get rid of Charlie. Is my contention these people, these places knew of this for quite a while. And to me, the best evidence of it, look at Matt Lauer. Everybody's saying they're shocked. We didn't know. At least that's what's published quotes. But then we learn after the first 24 hours that some people say, oh, yeah, we knew. Oh, there were rumors. Oh. And then within 24 hours, we have every detail we could possibly want about Matt Lauer's secret button under his desk to lock the door. And these people have no problem finding Matt Lauer sound bites from way back in 2005 and 2006, where he tells Meredith Vieira, hey, bend over a little more. Nobody had any trouble finding a Katie Couric soundbite where she said that the biggest, most noteworthy thing about working with Matt Lauer was that he liked to pinch her butt. So I think they've known. I think there's been suspicion. Jeff Zucker, who ran NBC for a while and was the exec producer of Today's Show, now over at CNN. I don't know this guy. I've never saw this kind of predation. A different guy. I didn't know. Well, there's got to be a reason that they didn't run the Ronan Farrow story. And there's also word that Matt Lauer had significant editorial control over what stories did make the air at the Today Show and what stories didn't. So, now granted, though, her point is right. I mean, the private sector is much quicker to move once they decide they're going to move. And I don't dispute that. But my caution here is that the government, granted, they do everything they can to avoid having to make a move. They don't, particularly Democrats. Now, the Republicans are the fastest to get rid of their own. The Democrats, not so much. Democrats circle the wagons, give it every chance they can to survive. And, of course, can you blame them? Their big formative event is the Clinton years. They got away. They literally got away, by the way, with the assistance of Matt Lauer in suggesting that it was a vast right-wing conspiracy that sent Monica Lewinsky into the Oval Office to deliver pizza to Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton shows up on the Today Show, Matt Lauer interviewing her, and she talks about this vast right-wing conspiracy, and Matt Lauer doesn't say, come on, don't insult our intelligence. You really think there's a bunch of right-wingers that made this happen? Instead, he just nodded his head. And so from the Democrat perspective, they get away with it. The Democrat lesson is they're not held accountable. The Democrat lesson is that there's nobody can make them get rid of their stars. The Democrat lesson is using the big dog Bill Clinton, they get away with it. And before him, Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy abandoned a woman at Chappaquiddick who died in the backseat of his car that he ran into a lake off a bridge. Ted Kennedy and Chris Dodd, famous for the waitress sandwich maneuver at the La Brasserie restaurant private room. The legions of Democrats, Hugh Hefner, the legion of Democrats that get away with this, and not just get away with it, they become bigger stars in the party. This is why, I made an observation. When this latest round of this stuff began, and even during the Clinton campaign, during the primaries, some of you may remember, many months ago, I predicted that the excrement would hit the fan once millennial women learned the truth about Bill and Hillary Clinton's treatment of women. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were relying on the fact that even in the 2016 presidential campaign, that it was the same media. Remember, the Clintons never did find a way to get out of the 90s. Their strategy, their assumptions of their enemies, it was all rooted in the history of the 90s, and they never moved forward. They stayed locked into the 90s and continued to treat events in 2014, 15, 16 as though they were happening all over again from the 1990s, and the strategies of dealing with them didn't change. But back in the 1990s, it was perfectly fine for Hillary Clinton to destroy women alleging her husband had abused them or raped them. Perfectly fine. Democrat Party said, great. Democrat Party applauded it. Women in the media applauded it. Female reporters said, I would give Bill Clinton a Lewinsky as perpetual thanks for keeping abortion legal. The female press corps in the 1990s did not lift a finger to hold Bill Clinton accountable or Hillary Clinton accountable, and they, not only that, they helped the Clintons destroy or damage or try to damage any opposition to the Clintons from the right or from the women who were Clinton's victims. Well, I predicted, based on my study of millennials and what they were being taught with the never-ending women's studies, and I'm looking at this rape culture on college and how it's being promoted, and how Lena Dunham and all these millennial women are telling every other woman that rape is awaiting them right around the corner. Rolling Stone with a totally fake story, and I surmised, using intelligence guided by experience, that once a significant number of these millennial women reporters actually learn what happened, when they actually learn how Hillary Clinton ran a bimbo eruptions operation to destroy women alleging sexual harassment, that they would not behave the way the female reporters of the 90s did, that they wouldn't put up with it, and that they would begin to see the Clintons in a whole new light, because they hadn't lived through it. The Clintons were not something they had a personal connection to. There was no investment in the Clintons. Their futures and their lives and their businesses didn't depend on keeping the Clintons happy or keeping the Clintons at the top of the heap of the Democrat Party. And if you look, many of the infobabes and reporterettes that are writing stories on Franken and Matt Lauer and Harvey Weinstein et al. Are millennial female reporters. They have been marinating all of these years in women's studies courses in the academy, and they're not going to put up with this kind of stuff. They're not going to put up with the groping, and they're not going to ignore it, and they're not going to think it doesn't mean anything, and they're not going to say, we got to protect the gropers for the Democrat Party. The generation of women before them overlooked all of that. The female generation before the millennials actually enabled the sexual harassers and the gropers and the pervs, but not millennial women, except against Republicans, of course. That's not changed. Can you imagine how Bill and Hillary must have laughed themselves silly over Bob Peckwood being forced to resign while Bill was getting away with the things he was doing to women at that very period in time? And speaking of how the Clintons got away with things, I just reminded you how Matt Lauer helped the Clintons facilitate that absolutely insulting idea that it was a vast right-wing conspiracy that somehow finagled Monica Lewinsky into the Oval Office delivering pizza. And it was somehow vast right-wing conspiracy that ended up being responsible for Clinton's semen on a dress that she was wearing. Matt Lauer helping to facilitate that very idea. So I think my prediction, to a certain extent, has come true. The millennial women reporters reporting on this have no tolerance. They're not willing to look the other way when it comes to these Democrat pervs. I don't deny there's a preference for these guys politically. I'm not saying that these women are conservative or supportive of Republicans or conservative, but they're not. They have been literally marinated in women's studies. They have grown up being taught that life is as a woman is to be abused, harassed, and at worst raped. And so when there are examples of it, they're not going to give these perps a pass. And I think it's confusing the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party has always been able to rely on the media, you know. The Democrat Party, that's always been the fallback. The Democrat Party's escape hatch, the Democrat Party's pink slip, the Democrat Party's permission slip, the Democrat Party note from the doctor, note for the parents, has always been the drive-by media. The drive-by media has covered for all of them. And elements of the drive-by media are trying to cover for them now, trying to cover for Franken, trying to cover for Conyers. They didn't have enough time to try to cover for Matt Lauer. But don't be surprised at some of the things you might hear in the future about how, you know what, we might have overreacted in the early days of Matt Lauer, and maybe some of these things we need to reconsider, because they're going to have to try to rehab these people. I don't mean millennial female reporters. I'm talking about the Democrat Party and the American left at large is going to have to find a way to rehab these guys, because if they don't, the taint is permanent. And they may not succeed at rehabbing them, but they can't allow this taint to go unbattled. Why are you frowning? You just... I don't know how the millennial... It depends... Snerdley said, how do you think millennial women are going to react to the rehab? Depends on how they play the rehab. If the perp comes out of rehab or whatever and is just falling all over himself in tears and sorry and so forth, you never know how it'll play. Look, as human beings, we want to forgive anyway. We are a people that are very much into second chances. I'm just saying, beyond all that, I mean, I think this is our basic human nature. Beyond all that, the politics of this, they've got to try to rehab and save these guys. I don't know how far they'll go to try to save Al Franken, for example. That day of reckoning is yet to happen, but it's going to happen. He's gone. Nobody involved knows it yet. Another prediction made by me here on the 30th of November at 1:22 Eastern Time in the afternoon. Welcome back, my friends. Half my brain tied behind my back. Always, just to be fair. And we go next to Rochester, New York. This is Steve. It's great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you. This is the best birthday present ever.
Well, happy birthday. Is your birthday today?
Yes.
How old are you?
I am 64.
64 years old. Congratulations.
Which is how I know what I know. I used to listen to you before. Old Mick from the High Mountains used to call in with his favorite stew recipe.
Mick from the High Mountains of New Mexico.
Yeah, he was great.
He was. So, sadly, no longer with us.
No. Anyway, in the first hour, you said that you never asked us to call in. But we had. You asked us to call in sometime in the 90s, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what it was. But you want to show Congress what would happen if we did, because they had kept saying that Rush is telling his people to call in, and that's why we're getting so many calls.
You have an excellent memory. He is exactly right. I think it was on a budget deal or something going on, and I made it a point when this program started not to use activism. I was not the guy telling you to cut up your credit card and send them to Mobil or Exxon. I did not urge people to call Washington. I didn't want it to be seen as artificial. And yet the media kept explaining overrun phone calls in Capitol Hill because I was telling my audience to call. So one day, for a journalist, it might have been Howard Feynman Newsweek. It was Steve Roberts. Steve Roberts, who is the husband of Cokie Roberts at ABC News. That's exactly right. Steve Roberts, I said, let me show you what will happen when I do. And I did. He's right. One day, I urged everybody to call Congress about something and shut down the Capitol Hill switchboard. You are exactly right. And to this day, I get requests from individual members of the House and Senate to do it, and I don't do it. I don't do it. Because once a bunch of phone calls can be said to be artificially generated by a talk show host, then they're discounted. And that I don't want. Look, it's your birthday here. I want to give you the opportunity of some gifts. Would you like a new iPhone?
Oh, wow. Yeah, great. Sure.
I have a bunch of them. I have an iPhone 8 Plus or an iPhone 10. The iPhone 10 is the hot shot. That's the newest. That's state of the art. I assume that's what you want.
Oh, yeah, fabulous. Thank you.
All right. Now, I'm also going to give you a 1-year complimentary subscription to the Limbaugh letter and the Rush 24/7 website. So,
whoa.
That's right. Happy birthday. Hang on just a second here. Do not hang up, because Mr. Snerdley needs to get some questions answered to you about your carrier and your address to send this stuff to you. In the meantime, we'll take a brief time out and be right back after this. Don't go away. So here we are on the 30th of November. Now, here on this program, the Christmas season began with Thanksgiving. It always does. But tomorrow, if there's any doubt, December 1st, it's really official. And every year, folks, the EIB network and the Rush website have had an ornament for your Christmas tree as what we call a premium. If you order a new subscription to the website or the newsletter, the ornament would be thrown in as the premium gift. And it was also available in the EIB store. We've changed it around this year. We've had for the past couple of months a brand new Tervis tumbler as the premium for new subscribers to the website, which is encyclopedic. I mean, I could spend 10 minutes extolling the virtues of RushLimbaugh.com. It's got a free side, too, that is entirely... It's got so much information on it you couldn't possibly access it all. But the paid side has got even more. We're just so proud of it. I can't begin to tell you. I don't really extol its virtues enough here. And then, of course, there's the Limbaugh letter. We're changing things up this year. Rather than the Christmas ornament become a premium, we this year are installing it as a sale item in the EIB store. And new subscribers from now till the end of the year will continue to get the brand new Tervis tumbler. I'm holding the Tervis tumbler up right now here on the Ditto cam. Let me put it on the side camera, maybe a little closer. There you go. That's an idea of the Tervis tumbler. It's excellent at keeping cold beverages cold with no sweat on the outside. I even drink my coffee out of it because it keeps warm beverages warm much longer than a standard glass or cup. But I want to tell you about the ornament because we've gone all in on the Christmas tree ornament this year in honor of almost 30 incredible years on the radio. We commissioned a wonderful American company in a small town in Pennsylvania to hand make our special, these are hand-forged, special edition Rush Limbaugh EIB Christmas ornaments. And they're one of a kind. These exclusive ornaments, folk, they're stunning, particularly compared to the ornaments that we have distributed in previous years. I have one here. I can hold it up on the Ditto cam, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a picture of it, and we'll put it on the switcher. I wouldn't be able to get close enough to show it to you, and a close-up shot will give you more detail of it. But you'll also be able to see it at RushLimbaugh.com. It is a work of art. There's an American flag proudly placed in the center of the circle with America's Anchorman, the EIB logo, and my name etched around the flag beautifully. And there is a special quote from me hand-stamped on the back and the year. Now, we got to see these ornaments being hand forged. We actually sent our design crew to the factory in Pennsylvania where these are made to watch them being hand forged. It was incredible. You would not believe how many steps are involved making these ornaments just looking at it. But they are quality works of art, and the people that we commission to make them are the best in their craft. They're right here in America, in Pennsylvania. Starts in the art department with our design, goes to the master engraver. It gets cut. It gets hand hammered. It's then polished. Every single ornament hand tied with a ribbon for you to hang on your tree. All handmade by Americans. There is no question this year's EIB Rush Limbaugh ornament is one of a kind, a collector's piece. We have a limited supply, so be sure to act quickly if you would like one. Don't say I didn't warn you if we end up being sold out here. Well, we're not going to try to Apple iPhone you on this. We've got a significant stock, but, I mean, don't wait too long here. The ornaments are handmade. We can't just mass produce these things with a phone call. So go to rushlimbaugh.com and scope them out. Take a look at them. You'll find them at the EIB store. There's a tab there you'll find at rushlimbaugh.com. That's where you'll see them. Here's Rick, Fort Myers, Florida. Great to have you with us on the phone today, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, Rush. The phone thing. I'm sure that your phone's better than the Obama phone. But anyway,
there's no comparison.
Yeah, anyway, I would put yours on the wall under a frame, up in the living room. But anyway, isn't sexual harassment a type of intimidation? So if sexual harassment,
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So if sexual harassment is a type of intimidation, that means that the left has been holding the women down, breaking through the glass ceiling. Wouldn't you say?
No question about it.
Yeah,
wait a minute, hold it a minute now. It kind of works in the opposite way, though, as far as the women are, because the women think they have to shut up if they're going to have a chance at advancement.
Yeah. And one more thing, Chuck Todd, Chuck Todd, you call him, a few months ago said that Hillary had the thumb on the scales when she was running for office against Bernie. So they already knew, the press already knew that they were in for Hillary. And so the thing is, I think we need to scrutinize them. When did they know? When did they know it? About all these things. They need to be held accountable for this stuff.
Well, the Democrats are not interested in holding them accountable, and it's their deal. The Democrats didn't even want the FBI to examine their server. The whole point of all this has been to cover up the rigging of that primary. And in politics, the Democrat Party can do what they want to do, and it's so-called nobody else's business. Where it becomes other people's business is you inform the American people and Democrat voters that their primary was rigged, and then they're supposed to take care of it with their votes and their donations the next time around. When do they know, and when did they know it? It's been widely known what Hillary Clinton was doing with Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz in terms of rigging that primary. Anyway, I appreciate the call. TJ in Athens, Georgia, you're next. Great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
It's a pleasure to talk with you, Russ, and I want to wish you and your staff a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, TJ. I appreciate that.
You said something the other day about Elizabeth Warren and the CPFB.
That's right.
The Consumer Organization. And looking back, I am so sick of the Clintons. I just can't say it. But, since she did the Stand By Your Man interview on CBS years ago, it's just, how did they get away with this? And I think and I was connecting the dots given your comment about Warren, and she was showing up on the campaign trail last year with Clinton so many times. And I think if they're laundering money to the liberal causes, they expected her, they really expected her to win. And that was really what was really bothering me, is that I think what was the connection, or the dot connection, was she's going to win automatically, and they'll just funnel all that money through that CFPB. And I just want to run that thought by you.
Well, they've already been doing that. That was the whole reason the thing was set up. What we're talking about here is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It was an offshoot of Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank was a piece of legislation that came out of the financial crisis 2008, designed, as they said, to protect consumers from, once again, predatory lenders and banks and blah. And the banks had only become predatory lenders because the government demanded that they loan money to people who couldn't pay it back. That's the subprime mortgage crisis. As an adjunct to Dodd-Frank, Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, set up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But there's a twist. It was set up as an autonomous agency, and it was signed into law by Obama, which is how it passed the unconstitutionality of it. It was signed into law by Obama. It is not funded by appropriation from Congress, which is what makes it unconstitutional. It is funded from the Federal Reserve. In addition, it has its own leader, its own president or head. I forget what the title, executive director, whatever. In this case, the most recent one was Richard Cordray. And what this actually it had a twofold real purpose. The stated public purpose was that this agency was going to safeguard the little guy. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was going to make sure that predatory lenders didn't screw you, didn't take advantage of you, didn't overcharge you interest rates, didn't deny you loans, didn't all of this stuff. It was typical caca from the Democrat Party. What it really was a pass-through. It was a way to get money to left-wing special interest causes. The way it did it was via fines. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau had the authority to fine lending institutions, financial institutions, for improper behavior. And so let's make something up. Let's say they want to fine Wells Fargo because Wells Fargo did something that they disapprove of, and they fine Wells Fargo $1 million. Wells Fargo will pay it rather than fight it. It's part of the cost of doing business. That $1 million, remember, the CFPB not accountable to Congress. It's not funded with taxpayer money. It's funded from the Federal Reserve. So it's therefore independent. They took that $1 million, for example, and would give it out to Planned Parenthood, or would give half of it to a global warming special interest, or a climate change special interest, or what have you, a union. And this happened with all the fines that were levied. It was the purpose. It was the unstated purpose. It was a funding mechanism for left-wing special interest causes. In addition to that, it served as a money laundering pass-through, because some of these fines, as they were collected and run through the CPFB, then ended up in places other than left-wing special interest causes, and the money had to be cleaned, and it had to appear to be legitimate when it was redirected. So the controversy now is Cordray, current executive director, is leaving. And according to Pocahontas, the president doesn't have any authority in naming his successor. He does. Richard Cordray, a nobody, a chump change employee, does not have, because of something called the Federal Succession Act, he does not have the constitutional authority to name his successor. Only the president does. Because even though this thing was set up as an independent agency, it's still in the executive branch. And so the fight now is Cordray wanted to name his deputy, Leandra English. And the reason is they want to make sure this thing operates as it has been, even though Trump is president. They want to be able to fine lending institutions and take that money and give them to left-wing special interest causes, or even individuals. Well, when Cordray announced he's leaving, Trump moves in and says, sorry, I'm putting Mick Mulvaney over there. You don't have the right to name your successor. I'm putting Mick Mulvaney, the Office of Management Budget, in there. And he's in there, and it went to court. The libs tried to take this to court, and a judge told Cordray, you don't have the right to name your successor. You don't have the constitutional right. You have no authority whatsoever. You're a chump change employee. The libs and Pocahontas set this thing up, what they thought would be acting in perpetuity, unaccountable to anybody. And the idea was that even if a Republican was elected president, he wouldn't be able to touch it. Well, Trump said, really? You don't think I can touch it? Watch this. And Mick Mulvaney is now in charge. And the reason they are bleeding like stuck pigs is because Mulvaney is going to find out exactly everything that's been going on there and is going to expose it. And this thing that was set up ostensibly to protect consumers and the little guy from these horrible, mean financial corporations, the American people are going to learn that the Democrat Party was using this as an adjunct personal piggy bank, a way to get private sector money funneled to left-wing special interest causes. That was not taxpayer money, came from the Federal Reserve, but it's the fine money. This is a classic example of the left's real intent for wanting control of government. It has nothing to do with protecting consumers, has nothing to do with making sure the little guy's protected. It's all about the left being able to reach out and put their hands on somebody else's money with the power to fine them. And then take that money and essentially give it to themselves, give it to their own operatives advancing their agenda. I have to take a break. Ponder that. Back in a second. Talent on loan from God. What is this? CNN reporting that Manafort and Mueller have reached agreement? I mean, Manafort has flipped. Is that what they're trying to say? CNN only. We'll hold off on any details since we don't have them. And we'll wait until we get details and we'll pass them on. Do you have that in the switcher yet? Here is, I just snapped a picture of the ornament in its box. And I've put it in the switcher here at the Ditto Cam. So there it is, folks. That ornament, that's probably 3.5 inches in diameter is what you're looking at there. That is hand forged, hand stamped, and the year and pithy saying is on the back of this thing. But that's actually taken in the box that it comes in. You can't see the ribbon at the top, but there's a red ribbon attached to it at the top that you use to hang on the tree. And you'll also be able to see it at rushlimbaugh.com. But it's a special endeavor this year. And it's not a premium with new subscriptions to the website or the newsletter. It is for sale individually at the EIB store at rushlimbaugh.com. Now, I realize this is frustrating for those of you not watching the program on the Ditto Cam. The Ditto Cam is part of the subscription or member side at rushlimbaugh.com. You can watch the program on an app on your phone or your iPad, or you can watch it later. You can watch hosts of programs from the past later, or listen to the audio streaming. There are podcasts of each program each day made available about 30 minutes after the program, and they are all without commercials if you watch them on a delayed basis. So, and that's just one of the many benefits of membership at rushlimbaugh.com. Now I get to get a quick timeout. You sit tight. One big broadcast hour remains, and we'll get right to it. All right, the Manafort Mueller deal is just about his bail. It's not about anything else. Manafort still has to be approved by the judge. Got the details in front of me, but not enough time to share them with you here. But all it is an agreement on his bail, what he forfeits if he splits town, and what he's promising to give up and this sort of thing. The judge hasn't even approved it yet, so we'll take a break and be back in a sec. Geraldo Rivera wanted to get in on the action here on this on the Matt Lauer story. Greetings, my friends. Welcome back. Rush Limbaugh and the EIB Network. Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. Telephone number 800-282-2882. So when the news broke that Matt Lauer had been fired, for the reasons that he was fired, Geraldo tweeted or somehow said in the public domain that this sounded a bit extreme to him because the news business is flirty. He said the sexual harassment issue is so red hot now that there's no room for any thought or opinion but hang 'em high. He said if the news business wasn't a flirty business then, how to explain so many newsroom courtships that have led to happy marriages? And he alluded to the fact that much of what goes on in newsrooms isn't sexual harassment. It's just normal flirtiness and seduction and courtship. He said there's a slight chance that those making allegations were motivated by big money settlements, but he didn't think that was what was driving it. Well, there was a predicted outcry on social media, and Geraldo apologized hours later, saying he didn't sufficiently explain that this is a horrendous problem, long-ridden, and harassers are deviants who deserve what is coming to them. He didn't say that at first. He didn't call them deviants. He didn't even call them harassers. And he did not say that this is a horrendous problem. He said, it's just so overblown. I mean, the news business is a flirty business. You know, where guys go out there now, Geraldo may not look it, but Geraldo's in his 70s, and so Geraldo has a different generational take on all of this stuff. Geraldo comes, let me put it to you this way. Geraldo comes from the era and generation that wanted you to think they were banging each other left and right every night. That was how their success in the business was measured, in one way, not totally. But it was considered a feather in your cap if you were constantly hanging with babes in the news business. It's undergone a massive transformation now. And part of it is due to the chickification of the news. And by that I mean more and more women in executive positions, as well as reporting and producer and on-air talent positions. But it certainly is not the old boys club that it used to be. And I'm talking a generation or two ago, not last year, not 10 years ago. And by the way, chickification, I had somebody call me this week and suggest that all of this is the chickification of America. And I want to again say that that's not what I'm talking about when I refer to the chickification of America is when feminism overpowers masculinity and turns men into women. I don't consider the chickification of America to be women getting jobs in powerful positions. That's not the chickification of America. The chickification of America is when men stop being men and acquiesce or subordinate themselves. And men do that all the time to get to first base and second base with women, and hopefully to third base at home. But the chickification of America is a specific thing, and it's basically the emasculation of men. It is not, in my definition, women taking over industries by force, by numbers, or what have you. Let's move on to other items that are happening out there. Emerson College poll shows Roy Moore leads by 6 in Alabama. There's another poll that's showing Roy Moore's lead continues now. And it's fascinating to me. If you look at many political blogs, if you look at the 538s, you look at the big data analyst sites, they're now almost throwing their hands up in defeat and despair suggesting that it's impossible for Roy Moore to lose now. He's going to win. It's a 70% chance, 80% chance, 90% chance that Roy Moore's going to win. And it's amazing. It's become conventional wisdom now that the effort to deny Roy Moore has failed. And I think back to all of the energy this movement had. I mean, it had total occupation of the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post, ABC, CBS, NBC. I mean, you couldn't go 5 minutes watching or reading the news without some devastating latest development on the Roy Moore story. And they made it look like it was impossible. This guy should quit while he's ahead. This guy has no chance of winning. This guy is toast. This guy is just and of course the Republicans are piping in, even if he does win, we're not going to see him. This guy's a reprobate. Now, with these latest polls, it's amazing. It seems like the opposition has thrown up its hands and are now concluding that there's no stopping the guy. And you can tinge of bitterness in these opinion pieces and straight news reports about the status of the race. And what has now happened is, instead of just pointing out that Roy Moore's going to win, they're now saying, but he ought to be winning by double digits. He ought to be in a straight race where this is just Republican versus Democrat with no baggage. Roy Moore should be walking away with this, but he may only etch out a 5 to 8 point win. And they're trying to say that's nothing. That's not a mandate. That doesn't mean anything. And it's always a sure sign when the left figures their efforts have failed. They then try to project or cast the winner as having no power to do anything after the win, which is where they are now with Roy Moore. But I want you to stop and think so that you don't forget the mindset of the left and how discombobulated they are. Now, remember, we had the story yesterday. They can't believe Trump is still standing. They can't believe the Trump agenda is moving forward. They can't believe that Trump hasn't even been dented. They can't believe that Trump hasn't been stopped. They can't believe any of this. You go back to a year, starting after the election and the Russian collusion story, and I'm here to tell you that these people, vast majority of them, got up every day thinking that was going to be the day where the big news story that was going to take Trump out was going to happen. They got up every day thinking that day would be the day when the axe fell. And they got up every day for 365 plus days thinking that exact way. They got up hoping, they got up planning, they got up figuring, they got up thinking, they awakened every day with that. That's what propelled them. Get Trump. And they all thought they would, one way or the other. And even if it didn't mean they got him out of office, they were going to neuter him. They were going to turn his administration against him. They were going to paralyze him. They were going to segregate him. He was going to be way out there all alone, muttering in the halls of the White House to the portraits of former presidents, slowly going insane. That was the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, he quits in frustration. Or the best case scenario, the Republicans band together and literally kick him out of there. And that's what they were shooting for. Now, where are we a year later? Trump hasn't been dented. We're on the verge of tax cuts being passed. The effort to repeal and replace Obamacare, as far as Trump is concerned, never stopped. Republicans in the House and Senate is another matter, but as far as Trump's concerned, it never stopped. All of the efforts to stop Trump's travel ban has not stopped Trump. Trump just yesterday retweeted some videos depicting militant Islamic violence. The left literally went nuts. The swamp went nuts. Theresa May in the UK went nuts. It was a huge violation of political correctness. And Trump said, Theresa, you're paying the wrong attention to the wrong thing. I'm not the person to pay attention to. I'm not the story. The story is militant Islam and terrorism and what it is doing to your country and mine and its potential. And he's right. But they're so caught up in political correctness that militant Islam doesn't even exist, much less is it a danger. Donald Trump is the threat as far as all these establishment types are concerned. Where's Trump? Trump is triumphing. Trump is happy. Trump is growing into this job. You can tell that Trump every day now, I don't know what you call it. Is he actively enjoying it, or is he gotten used to it, comfortable with it? I don't know what, but Trump is clearly confident and happy to be where he is and is enjoying the job every day. This was not supposed to happen. Trump was supposed to be miserable. He's supposed to be unhappy. He's supposed to be frustrated. He's supposed to be filled with hate. Supposed to be going crazy in public. Look who's going crazy in public. It's the media, the Democrat Party. Just last night, CNN with a bunch of segments on Trump incompetence, Trump derangement, Trump delusion, Trump dementia. David Rodham-Gergen suggests the Trump family needs to conduct an intervention and send the guy away to a mental rehab institution and put Mike Pence in the Oval Office. While all that is happening, Democrat star after Democrat heavyweight has fallen due to sexual harassment and sexual abuse charges. The names are big and powerful and too numerous to mention. Starting with Harvey Weinstein, the reputation of Bill Clinton is finally being impacted. You know, people aren't talking about that, but that's one of the offshoots of this. You haven't seen Bill Clinton in the midst of this. Bill Clinton doesn't have the ability to pop up and solve this for them. Bill Clinton can't say, hey, we all need to come together on this and realize we've all made our mistakes in the past, but that was what it was. It was the past, and we need to love one another again. We need to start moving forward. They can't bring Clinton out to do that because Clinton's reputation, much as the last 20 years have been trying to erase the Lewinsky stuff, obviously a failure. Everything Bill Clinton did is now being cited and focused on for a new generation of people that didn't know about it. Hillary Clinton has become a laughing stock, and she doesn't know it. The Democrat Party is now running around trying to figure out which of its members they ought to force out and which they ought to try to keep. And to show them what really bad shape, to show you what really bad shape they're in, they think they need to save somebody like Al Franken. If they need to save Al Franken, they are in heap big doo-doo. If that's considered a success story. Bye-bye Matt Lauer. Bye-bye Harvey Weinstein. Not just celebrities. Weinstein, a big Democrat donor, a big Democrat fundraiser, a big Democrat bundler. Matt Lauer, a reliable media apparatchik for the Democrat Party, doing their work every morning on the Today Show and wherever else he went. Louis C.K., all of these highfalutin left-wing celebrities, Garrison Keillor. I mean, just yesterday, the producer for Jake Tapper's show on CNN waved sayonara. Hollywood producers, sub-producers, Hollywood makeup people, you name it, they're all dropping like flies. And the vast majority of them are indeed left-wing liberal Democrats. Contrast that to the exuberance, the panic, the excitement of a year ago, where every day they got up knowing that was going to be the day they got rid of Donald Trump. Every day. Every day was the day somebody was going to produce the news that Trump had indeed colluded personally with Putin to steal the election from, even though they knew that didn't happen. Even though they knew this was a contrived, made-up narrative, they were waiting for the day when somebody would have the hammer, the lie that could be sold as irrefutable, proving that Trump colluded. Even though it was a lie, it was going to be so powerful, Trump couldn't stop it, couldn't deal with it. They lived every day with this hope. It's what got them out of bed every day. It's what propelled them through the day, the belief that they were going to get Trump. Now the stock market is at an all-time high. New home ownership and prices are at an all-time high. Economic growth is much higher than it was ever under Barack Hussein Obama. From their standpoint, there's not too much else that could have gone wrong. Most everything they've dreamt of, hoped for, planned on, has blown up in their face. They are legitimately Wile E. Coyote. Trump is road runnering them off of every cliff while they're carrying the dynamite that explodes when they hit the bottom. And still they get up each and every day, believing, knowing, hoping that that day is going to be the day they frog march Donald Trump out of the White House in ankle chains and handcuffs. They still believe they're going to make that happen. Whereas the truth is, each day they continue to lose more ground. Each day it becomes clear they cannot mobilize public opinion to do their dirty work for them. They cannot shape public opinion to agree with them on Trump. They cannot separate Trump supporters from Trump. The one power they think they've always had, to bend and shape, flame and fork public opinion, that's not even working. They are the ones deranged. They're the ones who are delusional, and thus they are the ones actually presenting a great danger, I think. We'll be back in a moment. Congressman James Clyburn of the Congressional Black Caucasians is now denying that he ever said anything about Conyers shouldn't resign because his accusers are white women. He says he didn't say it, and what he's now suggesting Conyers should quit. So he's agreeing with the white woman of privilege in the House that the black guy in the hospital should go. Man, these Democrats are tough. I thought they cared about race. But the white woman of privilege, Pelosi, Pocahontas, whatever they say, everybody snaps to, tries to make it happen. Meanwhile, he found the accusers credible now. Clyburn found the accusers. Wow. By the way, speaking of Geraldo, we're going to go back here, audio soundbites, 1991, a Barbara Walters special interviewing the actress-singer Bette Midler. And Barbara Walters says, Bette, speaking of taste, what do you think of Geraldo Rivera's autobiography in which he said that you and he had a torrid sexual affair and that you were insatiable when it came to him?
I'm going to get in trouble. It was very unpleasant.
A little trouble.
Okay, getting a little trouble. Well, Geraldo and his producer came to do an interview with me in the 70s, the early 70s. And this was when he was very sort of hot. And he and his producer left the crew in the other room. They pushed me into my bathroom. They broke 2 poppers and pushed them under my nose and proceeded to grope me. And I didn't have any grope me. I did not offer myself up on the altar of Geraldo Rivera. He was unseemly. His behavior was unseemly.
Well, now, that's Bette Midler, 1991. What do you think it means they broke 2 poppers and pushed them under my nose? What do you think that means? Poppers, right? Those are... Well, what's the street name for that? We're talking. Okay, poppers is a street. Well, we all know what it was for, but she backed away and so forth. But this is, Geraldo writes that she couldn't take her hands off of him. That Bette Midler found him insatiable, and she on Barbara Walters' this is 1991, folks. It's like 26 years ago. I guess it just got flirty, in there, in the Bette Midler dressing room. Let's take a brief time out. We'll come back and continue making the most of every broadcast moment. Norman in Holbrook, Arizona. I'm glad you waited, sir. How are you doing?
Rush.
Hey, Norman, how are you?
I am super good and getting better. The master of liberal versus conservative mixed
mind-grappling martial arts. You continue to bring knockout power to conservative talk radio, Rush.
I like that. I may appropriate that in my liner stash.
I understand that. And from the land of the recently beleaguered John McCain, mega golf smacking and cigar smoking dittos.
Well, great to have you in the audience out there, Norman.
Hey, Rush.
Yeah.
I just read here that the NFL has got this figured out. Old Goodell and his cronies, they figured out the best way to figure this anthem kneeling problem is to throw about $90 million at it.
No. 100 million.
Okay, it's gone up.
Yes.
It's gone up. They want to give the United Negro College Fund 25%, the Dream Corps 25%, and 50% to the Players Coalition. I mean, they have it figured out now. Let's throw some money at it. But my question is, Rush, is the Players Coalition the same as the NFL union?
Yes. Well, it turns out there's the NFLPA, well, that's the union, and then there is a coalition of players that is independent of the NFLPA that has been organized for the purposes of this issue. And they are not in agreement. You're very shrewd out there, Norman, to have picked up on that.
And Rush, this money they want to throw at it is our donations. Where are they getting these donations from?
Well, let me explain this to you because it was going to be my next story, Norman, and I didn't want to steal your thunder. It was right here, the next thing on the stack, and so I wanted to use your call as a segue into this, and I appreciate it very. Norman, since I did steal your thunder, Lou, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Do you happen to need a new cell phone? If you do, I'd like to give you one. If you don't want one, don't need one, you don't have to take it. Don't feel.
I absolutely do, and I'm going to hand mine down to my wife because she needs an upgrade.
All right. So you have any preference in kind? I mean, I've got the iPhone 8 Plus, which is a great phone. The iPhone 10 is a new one. It's Face ID. It's really, really cool, but what do you have now? What do you have now? What kind of phone are you using now?
Rush, I have a Samsung. It's a S6 Plus or a 6S Plus, whatever that is.
Oh, you have no idea what you're in for. Are you sure you want to move to Apple? I mean,
yes, Rush, I have an iPod Touch. It's just to store music, is all it is. And
that's exactly what it's for.
Wonderful little device to store music. And
all right, so you're familiar enough with iOS. Okay, so you hang on. And Mr. Snerdley will get the pertinent information we need from you, including your address and your carrier and all that, and we'll get it out to you as soon as we can. We have a whole little presentation we put together as we send these out, so it may take a day or two to get it to you. Now, here's the deal. Folks, when I first saw this, here's the headline. NFL offers $100 million plan for social justice organizations in partnership with players. And my first reaction was, when did Jesse Jackson worm his way into this? Because this sounds like a monochrome coalition shakedown if I've ever seen one. I mean, this is the way the Reverend Jackson and Sharpton, they would threaten boycotts against companies, and they would claim the companies were under-hiring minorities or they were advertising in bigoted, racist ways. And the companies would then, of course, offer the Reverend Jackson penalty payments in exchange for the Reverend Jackson shutting up. So the NFL, you know what the NFL just cannot bring itself to tell the players as its employees, you guys like playing in this league? Then you're going to stand up. One of the conditions of employment is to stand for the anthem. At most, it's 2 minutes. It's just 2 minutes. And we play the game. But the NFL doesn't have the fortitude to tell them that. So the NFL wants to buy their allegiance. The NFL wants to purchase the apparent loyalty of the players. So the details of this, it was announced on Monday. The league submitted to players a final draft of a proposal that would contribute nearly $100 million to causes considered important to African American communities, which means to the Democrat Party. Whatever else this means, the NFL has agreed to funnel $100 million to causes important to the Democrat Party. That goes without saying, but I wanted to say it to leave no doubt. This is one of the most effective shakedowns I've ever seen, beginning with Colin Kaepernick refusing to take a knee last season, spending Thanksgiving Day on Alcatraz Island, celebrating Unthankfulness Day, inspiring other players to kneel. The NFL is paying a steep price for this. In-stadium attendance is down, TV ratings are down, and the NFL has decided that it's worth a $100 million payoff here to try to get the ratings back up and attendance back up by getting the players to stop publicly demonstrating their lack of support for America and the flag. The NFL hopes that the $100 million will effectively end the protests, which is a laugh. The thing about blackmailers is that once they get paid, they always want more. The original payment, damn, it just wasn't enough. We realized we didn't ask for enough. We realized we screwed up on our original allocation of the distribution. Now, some players who have actively protested since 2016 are not happy with this approach, and they plan to break away from the Players Coalition. The Players Coalition is a group of 40 players who negotiated this deal with the league. Philadelphia Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins, former NFL wide receiver Anquan Bolden are regarded as the leaders of the Players Coalition. Miami Dolphins safety Michael Thomas, the 49ers safety Eric Reed, tweeted Wednesday they are withdrawing. The Players Coalition was supposed to be formed as a group that represents NFL athletes who have been silently protesting social injustices and racism, Thomas and Reed said via Twitter. However, Malcolm and Anquan can no longer speak on our behalf as we don't believe the coalition's beliefs are in our best interests as a whole. So the NFL negotiated this deal with apparently just 2 players representing 40 other players, thinking that a massive $100 million payoff would work. Here's how it amortizes. The league will create an environment in which players will no longer want to protest. The NFL's offer earmarks $89 million over a 7-year period for both national and local projects. On the national level, owners this year would allocate $5 million, with their commitment growing annually and maxing out at $12 million per year from 21 through 2021. At the local level, owners will put up $250,000 every year. Expect players to match that amount, totaling $500,000. Players having to match ain't gonna fly. Just telling you right now, players having to match it ain't gonna fly. Neither is $100 million over 9 or 10 years gonna fly. Let me ask you, if you're a football fan, let's say this happens. Let's say the NFL does the deal and somehow the players unify, go for it, and agree to stand for the anthem. Is this going to end your problems with the NFL? If the players all of a sudden stop protesting verbally, if they stop kneeling during the anthem, are you going to automatically return to your TV sets on Sunday and Monday night as though nothing ever happened? My instincts are that this isn't going to work the way they think it's going to work. In fact, my instincts are that it isn't going to help. It's going to, the fans, I can't believe how to touch people. That's all I just cannot believe. Ladies and gentlemen, former Vice President Al Gore has been placed on suicide watch. I'm told the headline, Satellites show no acceleration in global warming for 23 years. You see, climate change has no data. All they have are computer models. And I'm not making that up. There is not a shred of empirical data confirming climate change. All they have are computer models forecasting it 30, 40, 50 years down the road. Global warming has not accelerated temperature rise in the bulk atmosphere in more than 23 years, according to a new study paid for by the Department of Energy. University of Alabama, Huntsville climate scientist John Christie, Richard McNider did the survey. No warming in the atmosphere or below 23 years and counting. I can't believe it. Tomorrow's going to be Open Line Friday. That is right. Man, oh, man. Well, it is what it is. We'll take a 21-hour break here, folks. As always, thank you so much for joining us today. It means everything, and we'll look forward to being back here with you tomorrow. See you then.